Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
This is exciting.
Yes,
January.
we are in a new year, and for you, Jennifer, and I, this is a great day because we have Amy here.
Okay, something's looking different within our podcast, and I love it.
Right?
I love it. We have the amazing Amy Wong.
Yeah, this is our first official guest to have on our podcast. So we're so excited, Amy, to have you here. I met you through a mutual friend, but I know that you have a background in coaching people in their speaking, but tell our audience more about what you do.
Absolutely. Well, first off, I want to thank you both so much for having me on your podcast, and I get to be the first one. Woo! So to kick off 2021 as your first guest, that's quite an honor. My name's Amy Wong. I am, yes, a communication coach. That's how we met, Scott, was through a mutual friend through that industry. I'm truly fascinated by just anything pertaining to transformation. And so what I have found is that the medium of communication is such a ripe way to access all forms of transformation for oneself, because communication is the medium within which we make everything happen. And so communication, it's a common denominator for how all of us connect, navigate, thrive. And so it's been a big passion of mine. And so what I do is I'm an executive coach, a workshop facilitator, and a keynote speaker on all things transformation, but mainly through that medium of communication.
Yeah. What really attracted me to inviting you to join us was the word trust.
Yeah.
And I know on your website, alwaysonpurpose.com, you mentioned trust right up front and how important it is. And I know in what Jennifer and I do, we talk about trust quite a bit. But I thought, because I know some of our listeners sometimes struggle with the challenge of giving a presentation on a topic that's emotionally charged, on a topic where people have pretty strong differing opinions and things like that's a difficult situation to be in. So I thought, well, why not get Amy on here to talk about trust, how we build it, how we infuse it into our presentations. I know you mentioned you're a communication coach, but our audience tends to come here to talk about presentations. So I wanted to ask you, is there something about presentations, about this ritual of a leader or a mid-level manager standing up in front of a group and having to deliver difficult news? How can someone approach that?
Well, I think you kicked this off in just the perfect way, because it really does come down to trust. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions for most people is that trust is the byproduct of liking each other, or it's the byproduct or the result of getting along. And trust isn't something we don't usually put a spotlight on and say, hey, let's really make sure that we've got a lot of trust here. We appreciate it when it's there, and we don't think twice. And then we wonder why there's so much conflict, or why there's so much turmoil, or why it's so hard to give tough feedback. And we're like, oh, what's the problem here? But what it comes down to is this thing called trust. And trust isn't an emotion. It's really it's created or eroded in how we're communicating. And so whether that's a dialogue, whether that's a presentation, and that the existence of trust is everything. Because when's the last time you had to go make a big purchase, say like go buy a car, or we went and bought a house? Would you do that from anyone you didn't trust? No. And so trust is truly, I really believe it to be a currency that we do need to focus on as much as we focus on the accuracy of the data. Because if we don't have that trust, then we can't do anything. So back to the question that you were asking around, how do leaders need to be thinking about giving a tough conversation, or giving tough, hard news, or whatever it may be. If we can bring it down to like, well, how much trust exists in the culture? How much trust am I able to relay and in this moment as I offer this information? That's really going to make or break the experience as a whole. And so yeah, back to what you're saying, that's really what we need to be thinking about, is how can we create and sustain this emotional connection with each other to let you know that, hey, I feel you and I see you as a human, and you have fears and desires and aspirations and histories and memories, and I honor that. And, you know, we also have work to do. So, and here's the data, right? So.
Yeah, I recently spoke with a client of mine. Unfortunately, he's in the hotel and hospitality industry. And of course, when COVID hit, you know, almost a year ago, since then, his organization has had to do a lot of furloughing and layoffs. So using that as an example, and let's assume maybe the culture of this particular organization, I'm not speaking to my client in particular, but just to sort of make up an example, isn't necessarily infused with trust already. How would a business leader stand up in front of a company and say, we're going to have to let some of you go?
Yeah, well, this is the question so many leaders are asking. It's like, how do I do that? And when I'm working with a client that has to deliver hard news like this, the first thing I help them get clear on is, you know, what's the ultimate objective here? Like, yes, it is to relay this information, but at the end of the day, everything's about a feeling. And so you have to be asking, what do you ultimately want them to feel at the end of this? And if you're not thinking of that, because guess what? You're going to have an impact. That you're going to deliver data, and your tone and your body language, your timing, your pacing, all of this is going to have an impact. And if you're not thinking about the emotional reality, the impact at the end of that communication, then you're leaving this up to chance. So you want to start with, well, what do I want them to feel? Well, now, clearly, if you have to announce that, hey, we're doing layoffs, realistically, you're not going to say, oh, I want them to be excited. I want them to feel held. I want them to feel supported. I want them to feel seen. I want them to feel hopeful. Or if we can lead with that intention first, that's going to determine so much of how we show up in that presentation. Because just having that mindful awareness, knowing that, okay, I'm going to have an impact, and here's what I want the impact to be, then naturally how we speak, and, you know, just how often I'm looking at my data to make sure that the data is accurate, and the pauses, so that because I'm feeling you as much as I'm giving you information, that will be felt on the other side.
Yeah.
So to do that, it starts with getting in touch with the human on the other side of that communication.
Amy, it's interesting because I feel some leaders, they're more natural with this approach. Yeah. They are very in tune with their teams and building the trust, and that's how they work with their teams. It's always at the forefront of their mind to build that trust and the connection. So when they do need to have these difficult conversations, the team is ready for it. They know that they're going to be held and supported. However, not all leaders have that skill set. Right. Not all leaders make trust as a priority with their teams. And do you have any tips on how can you identify that there is strong trust within your team? And when you realize that there isn't, how do you start working through that?
Wow. Well, so well said. And this is really, when it comes down to this work, this is what it's all about right there. It's helping leaders recognize that as much as we want to be transactionally excellent at what we do, we need to ensure that we are relationally sound and that we all feel safe with one another. And so where I think things go awry is when leaders are so focused on the data, on what's the objective of our business, forgetting that people are a part of that equation. When they become so heavily focused on that they lose sight of how people are feeling, how people feel acknowledged or heard or seen or appreciated or included. That's really what it comes down to. So
Amy, it's all about putting your team first, putting the needs of your team first. It's all about the team. When you're a leader, it's all about the team.
Yes.
Well, and what I heard was focus on this long game of relationships. Understand that in every transaction this quarter to hit these numbers, sure, that's the day-to-day business of business. But if you're going to have a thriving organization, even when you stand up to give a presentation, you have to ask, what's going to happen at the end of this? How will people feel about our relationship? I love that. Now, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I hope you don't mind, but you shared with us just before we came on that you've just completed your manuscript for your first book.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Scott, for mentioning. I am so proud of myself because I actually wrote a book in 2020.
Yeah. Well, and based on everything you've mentioned here, it should be awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's a journey. I've got some work to go, publishing a manuscript is a whole other ball of wax.
Sure.
Amy, I also want to mention to our listeners here, go to Amy's website, Always on Purpose. And Amy, I loved watching your video. It's a 5-minute video on the homepage of your website. And watching you are a dynamic presenter. The energy, the passion, and the way you use your gestures to paint the visual for your audience is dynamite.
Jennifer, thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's thank you.
Great video.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Yeah. Thank you, Amy Wong, for coming on today and joining us. Thanks, Jennifer. Good to see you.
Great to see
you. And we'll see the rest of you next week.
Yes. Have a great one.
Bye.